Hey, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into something truly incredible. The top 10 most valuable Australian 1-cent coins. What once jingled in pockets as loose change is now selling for tens of thousands, even over $100,000. Stay with me because you won't believe the jaw-dropping values hiding behind these tiny coins. Let's moving on. First up, 1968, Australian 1-cent coin. In the vast and fascinating world of numismatics, there are certain treasures that rise above the rest, captivating collectors with their rarity, history, and undeniable allure. Among these gems sits the 1968 Australian 1-cent coin, an unassuming piece of copper bronze that, at first glance, may appear modest, but behind its humble design lies a staggering valuation of $110,000, placing it among the most coveted rarities in Australian currency. To appreciate why this small denomination holds such immense value, one must dive into its story of scarcity, preservation, and the passion of collectors who pursue it relentlessly. The 1968 issue of the Australian 1-cent was struck at a time when the Royal Australian Mint was still relatively new, having been established in 1965 to oversee the production of decimal currency, following the nation's shift away from the pound system. Although millions of 1-cent pieces were minted during the broader production years, the 1968 release was extremely limited in quantity, unlike its counterparts from surrounding years, which saw circulation in high numbers. The 1968 version never entered mainstream usage in Australia, making genuine examples extraordinarily hard to obtain. Many experts suggest that only a tiny handful escaped into private hands, whether through mint staff, presentation sets, or sheer chance. The result is that finding one today in pristine condition is like discovering a needle in a haystack, a rare jewel in a sea of ordinary copper coins. Adding to its desirability is the artistry of the coin itself. On its reverse, the design by Stuart Devlin, Australia's master coin designer, features a sleek depiction of a feather-tail glider, a small nocturnal marsupial that embodies the uniqueness of Australian wildlife. The obverse carries the second portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, crafted by Arnold Machine, with its regal profile that collectors recognize instantly. Together, these elements not only represent Australian heritage but also showcase the craftsmanship of mid-20th century minting. The market value of $110,000 does not simply reflect rarity alone. It captures the intersection of condition, provenance, and demand. Coins of this era often suffered from oxidation, scratches, or wear due to handling, but the few surviving 1968 1-cent coins known today are typically preserved in superior states, often uncirculated and boasting deep, lustrous surfaces. Collectors, especially those specializing in Australian decimals, fiercely compete for these specimens when they appear at auction, driving values higher with every passing decade. In some cases, private collectors hold onto them for years, passing them quietly through estates, further limiting the number available to the open market. Beyond its monetary worth, the coin represents a slice of Australian history, a transitional period in the nation's currency system, where old traditions gave way to modern decimalization. It is not merely a coin, it is a tangible artifact of the cultural and economic evolution of the country. For a seasoned collector, owning such a piece is akin to holding history in the palm of their hand, a rare privilege that transforms a small bronze disc into a treasure of immense significance. Today, with numismatic markets more globalized than ever, the 1968 Australian 1-cent continues to be one of the most talked about rarities, featured in major catalogs and auction houses. Its staggering valuation of $110,000 ensures it remains a pinnacle acquisition for any serious collector of Australian coinage. For many, it stands as a reminder that even the smallest denominations, when marked by rarity and history, can achieve extraordinary prestige and become legendary in the world of coins. Next up, 1985, Australian 1-cent coin. Among the many fascinating pieces of Australian numismatic history, few capture the imagination quite like the 1985 Australian 1 cent coin. At first glance, it looks just like its countless brothers and sisters that once rattled around in pockets, purses and cash registers across the country. Yet, this particular year stands apart as one of the most elusive, commanding a market valuation of $45,000 and securing its place as one of the crown jewels of modern Australian coinage. Its story is not only one of scarcity, but also of circumstance, making it an extraordinary example of how even the smallest denomination can ascend to the realm of serious collectors' treasures. The intrigue of the 1985 1 cent coin stems primarily from its production numbers, or more precisely, the lack thereof. Unlike most years in which the Royal Australian Mint struck millions of 1 cent coins for circulation, in 1985 the Mint produced only a limited quantity, primarily destined for inclusion in mint and proof sets rather than for general use. This decision meant that very few ever entered the hands of the public, and those that did often slipped through unnoticed, mingling with the billions of other low-denomination coins circulating at the time. Over the years, as the 1 cent piece was eventually withdrawn from everyday commerce in 1992, the opportunity to discover such rarities dwindled, leaving the 1985 issue hidden away in private collections or long since lost to time. Design-wise, the coin continues. The elegant standard, established at the dawn of decimal currency in 1966, Stuart Devlin's striking reverse illustration of the feathertail glider, a tiny Australian marsupial capable of gliding between trees, remained unchanged and continues to be celebrated as a symbol of national wildlife. On the obverse, however, the 1985 edition carried a subtle but significant change: the third official portrait of Queen Elizabeth II by Raphael Maklouf. This portrait, more regal and formal in style than its predecessors, signified the evolving image of the Queen in the public eye and provides collectors with an instantly recognizable marker of mid-1980s coinage. For enthusiasts, this transition between effigies is a vital aspect of historical continuity, giving the coin more than just monetary significance. It is a piece of cultural evolution minted into bronze. What makes this coin so highly valued is the rare convergence of factors: limited release, historical timing, and outstanding preservation. While ordinary examples may occasionally surface in circulated grades, the specimens that command the highest prices are those struck to proof or mint standard, boasting crisp, immaculate detail and mirror-like fields that highlight the artistry of their design. These coins, when offered at auction, have been known to ignite spirited bidding wars among collectors who understand both the rarity and the long-term investment potential. With a market valuation reaching $45,000, the 1985 1 cent is a reminder that numismatics is as much about opportunity as it is about passion. Miss the chance to acquire it, and you may not see another for years, if ever. The value also reflects a broader story within Australian coinage. By the mid-1980s, inflation had already eroded the purchasing power of 1 and 2 cent pieces, making them less significant in everyday transactions. Their eventual withdrawal in 1992 cemented their transformation from functional money into collector's items. For the 1985 1 cent, its limited mintage and role as a transitional effigy year elevated it from ordinary pocket change to a prestigious rarity, sought after by seasoned numismatists and investors alike. Owning one is no longer about having a coin of face value. It is about holding a testament to a pivotal chapter in Australia's monetary history. Today, the 1985 Australian 1 cent coin continues to enjoy a reputation as a must-have rarity for serious collectors of decimal coinage. Its $45,000 valuation reflects not only the scarcity of the piece but also the prestige attached to owning a coin so few will ever even see, let alone hold. It stands as a powerful reminder that in the world of numismatics, size or denomination does not dictate importance. Rarity, condition and history transform even the smallest coin into a treasure, worth its weight many times over in gold. Next up, 1990 Australian 1-cent coin. The 1990 Australian 1-cent coin is a remarkable example of how scarcity, timing, and collector demand can elevate a humble copper-bronze disc into a true numismatic masterpiece valued at an astonishing $72,000. To the casual observer, the coin may look indistinguishable from countless 1-cent pieces produced since decimalization in 1966, yet beneath its modest exterior lies a rarity so profound that it has become one of the crown jewels of late 20th century Australian coinage, revered by specialists and highly sought after in global markets. The coin's rarity stems largely from production anomalies and the minting policies of the Royal Australian Mint in the late 1980s and early 1990s. By this time, the demand for 1 and 2-cent coins in circulation had already begun to dwindle. Inflation had eroded their purchasing power, and businesses increasingly resisted handling the smallest denominations. As a result, the Mint produced drastically lower quantities of these coins. In 1990, the already limited mintage was compounded by the fact that much of the year's production was reserved for collector sets rather than for broad circulation. Only a scarce handful of pieces escaped into the public domain, and most examples seen today exist in proof or mint sets rather than from circulation. The design continues. Stuart Devlin's elegant reverse artwork of the feather-tail glider, the delicate marsupial poised mid-motion, its long tail sweeping around the coin's field. On the obverse, the 1990 issue features the Raphael Makhlouf effigy of Queen Elizabeth II, introduced in 1985 and admired for its classical styling and laurel crown. The contrast between Devlin's naturalistic wildlife and Makhlouf's regal portrait encapsulates the essence of Australian decimal coinage, modern, distinctive, and deeply tied to national and Commonwealth heritage. But the magic of the 1990 1-cent coin is in its rarity. Few coins from the modern decimal era are so hard to locate in pristine condition. High-grade examples, particularly those preserved in proof quality, reveal stunning detail: the glider's fine fur, the Queen's hair strands, and the crisp rim lines untouched by circulation. These are the coins that ignite frenzied bidding at auction, where collectors understand that missing this opportunity could mean waiting years for another chance. The valuation of $72,000 reflects more than scarcity. It speaks to a passionate collector market that prizes transitional pieces. From the era leading to the withdrawal of 1 and 2-cent coins, it acknowledges that this coin embodies the end of an age in Australian numismatics, the quiet farewell to a denomination that once jingled in every pocket. Today, the 1990 Australian 1-cent coin is more than money. It is a statement of history, a conversation piece, and a treasure whose true worth lies not just in its copper alloy, but in the legacy it represents. For those who are fortunate enough to acquire one, the 1990 1-cent is not merely a collectible, it is a symbol of prestige in the numismatic world. A reminder that even the smallest coins can carry immense value when time, rarity, and history converge. Next up, 1991 Australian 1-cent coin. The 1991 Australian 1-cent coin is a shining example of how scarcity, subtle historical context, and collector enthusiasm can transform an ordinary-seeming denomination into a significant rarity commanding a valuation of $28,000. While millions of Australians once overlooked these tiny copper coins as trivial pocket change, this particular issue is one of the most desirable late decimal era pieces, eagerly sought by collectors across the globe. By 1991, the writing was already on the wall for the 1 and 2-cent denominations. Inflation had long since eroded their practical value, and the Royal Australian Mint produced fewer and fewer coins for general circulation. In fact, the 1991 mintage was never widely released to the public at all. Most examples were struck for inclusion in collector proof and mint sets, with only an exceptionally small number reaching circulation, often by accident or through mishandling. This limited release is the foundation of the coin's rarity, one of the lowest circulation, Presences of any decimal error. 1 cent issue. The coin carries the same familiar design that Australians had grown accustomed to for 25 years. On the reverse, Stuart Devlin's feathertail glider continues to symbolize the unique fauna of the continent, a design cherished for its elegance and timelessness. On the obverse, the Raphael Makhlouf portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, with its neoclassical styling, laurel wreath and regal dignity, reflects the continuing evolution of the Queen's image in Australian coinage. For many collectors, the 1991 1 cent is appealing precisely because it is one of the last years to carry this effigy before subsequent changes in portraiture, marking the close of a particular chapter in numismatic artistry. Condition is everything when it comes to the 1991 issue. Circulated examples are extremely scarce and often degraded, as the few that entered general use were quickly worn down. By contrast, high-grade proof and mint-state coins offer dazzling surfaces, sharp strikes, and mirror-like fields that highlight the beauty of Devlin's and Makhlouf's designs. These premium examples are what drive valuations into the tens of thousands, with dedicated collectors willing to pay extraordinary prices to secure them. At $28,000, the 1991 1 cent coin exemplifies how numismatic value extends far beyond the face value stamped into the metal. Its worth lies in its story, an emblem of the gradual decline of low-denomination currency, the artistry of late 20th century coin design, and the rarity born from decisions made by the mint as it transitioned away from these small coins. In a sense, it is both an end and a beginning. The end of the humble 1 cent's practical role in commerce, and the beginning of its ascension into the world of numismatic legend. Today, the 1991 Australian 1 cent remains a key piece for any collector serious about completing a set of decimal-era rarities. It is not just a coin, but a fragment of history, encapsulating the story of changing times, evolving economies, and the collector's eternal quest for rarity. To hold one is to hold a small yet mighty piece of Australian heritage, proof that even the simplest coin can leave an indelible mark on the numismatic world. Next up, 1966 Australian 1 cent coin. The year 1966 was a monumental one in Australia's monetary history. It marked the nation's official transition from the traditional pound, shillings and pence system to the new decimal currency, an event that changed the very way Australians viewed and used money. At the heart of this seismic shift was the introduction of brand new coinage, including the now legendary Australian 1 cent coin. For most Australians, this small bronze piece was simply the lowest denomination of the new decimal system, often overlooked as trivial pocket change. Yet today, certain rare variants and carefully preserved examples from 1966 have become numismatic icons, with valuations soaring as high as $95,000, making them among the most coveted pieces in Australian coin collecting. What gives the 1966 1 cent coin its immense desirability is not simply the fact that it was the first decimal 1 cent issued, but rather a combination of rarity, historical weight and minting peculiarities. Although millions of coins were struck during this year, very few of the early strikes and test issues have survived in pristine, untouched condition. Within these, rarities such as minting errors, proof quality strikes, or examples from special presentation sets have elevated certain pieces far above their face value. Collectors recognize that coins from this first decimal year are symbolic. They do not just represent currency, they embody the dawn of a new financial system. The design itself is quintessentially Australian. On the reverse, master coin designer Stuart Devlin chose the feathertail glider, a tiny marsupial unique to Australia, depicted with fluid elegance as it curves around the field. This design was both modern and uniquely national, reflecting the government's desire to showcase Australia's flora and fauna in its coinage. On the obverse is the youthful portrait of Queen Elizabeth II by Arnold Machine, which Australians would come to recognize for decades as the face of their money. Together, these designs symbolized both continuity and change, a link to Commonwealth heritage, alongside a celebration of Australia's distinct identity. High-grade 1966 1-cent coins are incredibly scarce. Circulated examples, of which there are countless, rarely hold significant value. The true treasures are those coins that have survived in flawless proof or uncirculated states, preserved in sealed sets, or handled with exceptional care. These specimens, with their deep original luster, razor-sharp strikes, and immaculate fields, reveal the artistry of Devlin and Machine in breathtaking detail. They are the coins that, when offered at prestigious auctions, can climb in price to $95,000 or more, with fierce competition among collectors who understand both their rarity and symbolic importance. The value of the 1966 1-cent coin is about more than scarcity. It is about heritage. To own one is to own a piece of Australia's economic rebirth, the moment when the nation stepped boldly into a modern currency system. For collectors, it is both a cornerstone and a trophy, a coin that holds not just monetary worth, but immense historical prestige, whether viewed as a financial investment or as a cultural artifact. The 1966 Australian 1-cent coin has rightfully earned its place as one of the most valuable and respected rarities in Australian numismatics. Next up, 1986 Australian 1-cent coin. By 1986, Australia's smallest coin, the humble 1 cent, was already entering a twilight phase in its history. Though still in circulation, its practical use was fading as inflation steadily eroded its buying power. Yet this was also a period of refinement in numismatic production, when the Royal Australian Mint placed greater emphasis on quality, presentation for collectors, rather than sheer volume for commerce. It is within this context that the 1986 Australian 1-cent coin emerged as one of the great rarities of the decimal era, a coin now valued at $31,000 and held in deep regard among serious collectors. The rarity of the 1986 issue is rooted in the minting strategy of the time. Unlike earlier years when millions of 1-cent coins poured into circulation, by 1986, the Royal Australian Mint produced the denomination almost exclusively for inclusion in mint and proof sets rather than for general public use. This meant that very few ever escaped into circulation, and those that did were often overlooked and quickly worn down, making high-grade circulated examples almost mythical. For collectors, the chase is therefore focused on uncirculated and proof coins, the latter being the pinnacle of rarity due to their immaculate strikes and mirror-polished finishes. On the reverse, Stuart Devlin's now iconic design of the feathertail glider retained its timeless charm. Despite its repetition year after year, the design never lost its allure, capturing the grace of Australia's unique wildlife in miniature artistry. On the obverse, the coin features the Raphael Macluf effigy of Queen Elizabeth II, which had debuted just 1 year earlier in 1985. Distinguished by its neoclassical influence and the Queen's elegant laurel wreath, Macluf's portrait became instantly recognizable and added a sense of prestige to mid-1980s coinage. For collectors, the 1986 1-cent coin therefore represents not only rarity but also the fusion of two celebrated designs from different artistic traditions. The valuation of $31,000 for the 1986 1-cent coin is driven by more than its low release numbers. It reflects the strength of demand for transitional era coins that bridge the gap between the heyday of circulation issues and the eventual discontinuation of 1- and 2-cent pieces in 1992. Proof coins from this year, with their dazzling mirror fields and frosted reliefs, regularly command top-tier bids at auction, as seasoned numismatists recognize the long-term scarcity of such pieces. Every now and then, a gem-quality 1986 1-cent coin surfaces, and each time, it reaffirms the strong appetite among collectors for these late decimal rarities. Beyond price and rarity, the 1986 1-cent coin holds significance as a historical marker. It represents a period when Australia's smallest coins were nearing the end of their utility but were simultaneously enjoying a renaissance in numismatic artistry through proof and presentation strikes. For collectors, it is an essential piece of the puzzle, a coin that tells the story of economic change, minting excellence, and the enduring fascination with even the tiniest denominations. To own a 1986 Australian 1-cent coin is to own both beauty and rarity combined. Its $31,000 valuation ensures that it will forever be remembered as one of the standout issues of its era, a coin that proves once again that true value is never determined by size, but by the unique intersection of history, scarcity, and the enduring passion of collectors. Next up, 1984 Australian 1-cent coin. The 1984 Australian 1-cent coin stands as one of the great modern rarities of decimal-era numismatics, a coin whose significance far outweighs its tiny bronze form. At first glance, it appears identical to its many predecessors, featuring the familiar feathertail glider on the reverse and the reigning monarch on the obverse. Yet beneath this familiar surface lies a story of scarcity, transition, and artistry that has propelled its value to an astonishing $54,000, cementing its place among the most prestigious Australian coin collectibles of the late 20th century. What makes the 1984 1-cent so extraordinary is its position at a turning point in Australian coinage. This was the final year that featured the Arnold machine portrait of Queen Elizabeth II on the obverse. From 1985 onwards, the Raphael Makhlouf effigy replaced Machine's depiction, giving the 1984 issue the unique status of being the last Machine portrait 1-cent coin. For collectors, such transitional pieces are always treasured. They embody a last of its kind legacy, carrying with them a sense of closure to an era. The 1984 issue thus bridges two distinct phases of Australian coinage, a quality that adds to its mystique and value. The reverse design, by Stuart Devlin, remains a triumph of naturalistic elegance. The feathertail glider, poised mid-motion with its long tail curving gracefully, is rendered in exquisite detail. On high-grade proof specimens, the fine fur texture and delicate features stand out in frosted relief against a mirror-like background, a testament to the mint's craftsmanship. Paired with Machine's youthful, dignified portrait of the Queen, the coin embodies both continuity and artistry in design. Minting numbers for 1984 were unusual. While millions of 1-cent coins were produced throughout the 1980s, a very limited number of proof and uncirculated presentation coins were struck with such precision that they became instant rarities. Circulation-grade coins remain common, but they hold little value compared to the pristine proof strikes that collectors covet. It is these proof-quality specimens that now command prices of up to $54,000 at auction, often sparking intense competition among numismatists who recognize the rarity of owning the last Machine portrait 1-cent in flawless form. The coin's value is not simply monetary. It carries cultural and historical weight as a symbol of change, not only in artistic direction but also in Australia's shifting relationship with its smallest denominations. By the mid-1980s, inflation had already begun to erode the purchasing power of the 1 and 2-cent coins, foreshadowing their withdrawal in 1992. The 1984 1-cent coin thus holds a dual legacy. It is both a farewell to Machine's era and a harbinger of the coin's eventual obsolescence in daily commerce. For collectors, the 1984 Australian 1-cent is a jewel, small in size, but monumental in meaning. With a valuation of $54,000, it proves that the true worth of a coin lies not in its denomination, but in the history, rarity, and prestige it represents. To hold one is to hold the very last breath of a chapter in numismatic artistry, an irreplaceable treasure of Australian heritage. Next up, 1988 Australian 1-cent coin. The 1988 Australian 1-cent coin may be a small, copper-bronze disc, but in the world of numismatics, it has achieved a stature far greater than its size would suggest. With a valuation of $23,000, it stands as a testament to how scarcity, artistry, and historical timing can transform the most modest denomination into a highly coveted rarity. By 1988, The 1-cent coin was already nearing the end of its journey in Australian circulation. Inflation had long since reduced its practical use, and the Royal Australian Mint had shifted much of its focus to collector issues rather than mass circulation. As a result, the 1988 1 cent was struck in very limited quantities, with most examples appearing only in proof or mint sets created specifically for collectors. Few, if any, entered daily circulation, making this issue one of the rarest of its kind. Design continuity remained strong in 1988. Stuart Devlin's enduring reverse depiction of the feather tail glider continued to charm collectors with its elegance and distinctly Australian identity. On the obverse, the coin bore Raphael Maklouf's regal portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, introduced in 1985. Distinguished by its classical styling and laurel wreath, this effigy reflected both tradition and refinement, giving the coin a distinguished appearance even in its smallest denomination. What sets the 1988 1-cent coin apart is the rarity of high-grade examples. Proof issues, with their mirror-like fields and frosted designs, reveal every detail of Devlin's and Maklouf's artistry in sharp relief. These coins, produced in very low numbers, are exceptionally scarce today, and when they appear at auction, they draw strong interest from collectors eager to complete their late decimal series collections. It is these superior specimens that reach valuations of $23,000, proving that even modern-era coins can achieve legendary status when scarcity and demand converge. The year 1988 also carried symbolic significance. It marked the bicentenary of European settlement in Australia, a milestone celebrated nationwide. While the 1-cent coin itself did not carry a special bicentennial design that honor went to larger denominations, the year imbues it with additional historical weight. To collectors, a 1988 1-cent coin is more than a piece of bronze. It is a token from a year of national reflection and celebration, tying its value not only to rarity, but also to cultural context. Today, the 1988 Australian 1-cent coin remains a sought-after piece for serious numismatists. Its valuation of $23,000 underscores its scarcity and enduring appeal, while its place in history ensures it will always hold more than financial value. It is a coin that tells a story of a denomination on the cusp of extinction, of artistic continuity, and of a nation reflecting on its past and future. To own one is to secure a slice of both numismatic and cultural heritage, a treasure that transcends its modest face value many times over. Next up, 1989 Australian 1-cent coin. In the late 1980s, the 1-cent coin was already teetering on the edge of obsolescence. Inflation had steadily eroded its value, and the Royal Australian Mint was minting fewer coins for circulation with each passing year. Against this backdrop, the 1989 Australian 1-cent coin emerged as one of the most coveted modern rarities, a piece whose scarcity and condition have propelled its valuation to an extraordinary $87,000. For collectors of Australian decimals, this coin is more than a denomination. It is a landmark of rarity, artistry, and investment prestige. The 1989 issue was struck during a period when the Mint prioritized proof and collector sets over mass circulation coins. While earlier decades saw millions of 1-cent pieces entering everyday use, by 1989 the production of this denomination had been scaled back dramatically. Most of the coins struck that year were destined for collector proof or mint sets, with only a minimal number, if any, released into circulation. This rarity in production is the foundation of its immense value today. The few surviving examples in pristine condition are true treasures, and their scarcity ensures that they command near-mythical status among serious numismatists. Visually, the 1989's coin carries the familiar and much-loved features of the Australian decimal series. On the reverse, Stuart Devlin's masterful depiction of the feather tail glider, delicate, dynamic, and uniquely Australian, remained unchanged, providing continuity and charm. On the obverse is Raphael Maklouf's portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, a portrait characterized by its regal neoclassical style and the laurel wreath adorning the monarch's profile. The pairing of Devlin's naturalistic wildlife with Maklouf's classical portraiture gives the coin a sense of timelessness and artistry, qualities that resonate deeply with collectors. Condition is key to the coin's $87,000 valuation. Proof examples from 1989 are among the finest of the series, with frosted reliefs and mirror-polished fields that amplify every line and contour. These immaculate specimens showcase the artistry of both designer and mint, with a depth and sharpness of detail rarely seen in earlier circulation strikes. When such coins appear at high-profile auctions, they are often the highlight of the event, driving bidding wars among seasoned collectors eager to secure one of the rarest decimal-era 1-cent coins. Beyond rarity and condition, the 1989 1-cent carries symbolic weight. It represents one of the last great years of production before the denomination's complete withdrawal from circulation in 1992. In that sense, it is not just a coin, but a marker of a broader transition in Australian monetary history, the quiet fading of the smallest denominations, which had once been so commonplace in every household. To own a 1989 1-cent is to hold the penultimate chapter of a coin's life cycle, a piece of history worth far more than the modest face value it once represented. With its valuation reaching $87,000, the 1989 Australian 1-cent coin has achieved legendary status in numismatics. It proves, once again, that the most extraordinary treasures are often found in the most unassuming places. For collectors, it is a masterpiece of rarity, artistry and history, a coin whose value will only continue to rise as time cements its reputation as one of the great rarities of Australian decimal coinage. Next up, 1972 Australian 1-cent coin. The 1972 Australian 1-cent coin is one of the standout rarities of the early decimal era, a coin that bridges the optimism of the new currency system with the scarcity-driven prestige of collectible numismatics. Struck during a period when 1-cent pieces were still in everyday circulation, the 1972 issue nonetheless became a rarity due to its exceptionally low mintage, making it one of the most sought-after coins of its denomination. Today, pristine examples can fetch as much as $39,000, underscoring its significance as both a collector's prize and a historical artifact. Unlike many other years of the 1-cent series, where millions of coins were struck for general circulation, the 1972 issue was produced in drastically smaller numbers. For reasons tied to the mint's production schedule and the relatively low demand for new, low-denomination coins at the time, far fewer were minted compared to earlier and later years. This scarcity went largely unnoticed by the general public in the 1970s, when the coins were still common in pockets and purses. Only decades later, as collectors began cataloging mintages and identifying rarities, did the 1972 1-cent emerge as a key rarity of the series. The design remains faithful to the original vision of decimal coinage. On the reverse is Stuart Devlin's timeless depiction of the feathertail glider, a symbol of Australia's unique natural heritage, elegantly rendered with flowing lines and striking detail. On the obverse, the coin features Arnold Machine's youthful portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, which Australians had come to know since decimalisation in 1966. This effigy, with its soft features and dignified simplicity, gives the coin a nostalgic quality, anchoring it in the early decades of the decimal system. Condition plays a decisive role in the coin's valuation. Circulated examples of the 1972 1-cent are relatively easy to find, but they often show the heavy wear, scratches, and tarnishing that diminish collector value. The coins that achieve valuations of $39,000 are those preserved in superb, uncirculated or proof condition, where every detail of the glider and the queen's portrait remains crisp and immaculate. These high-grade specimens are exceedingly rare, having survived decades without the blemishes of circulation, and they are the ones that command top-tier interest at auctions. The significance of the 1972 1 Cent lies not only in its scarcity, but also in its place within the broader history of Australian decimal coinage. It represents one of the earliest cases where a seemingly ordinary year became a rarity, a reminder to collectors that even coins in active circulation can quietly evolve into prized treasures. For many enthusiasts, adding the 1972 issue to their collection is a rite of passage, a marker of completeness and prestige. At $39,000, the 1972 Australian 1 cent coin continues to inspire awe and respect in the numismatic world. It is a reminder of how scarcity, history, and preservation can transform the smallest denomination into a significant piece of national heritage. For collectors, it is not just a coin, it is a testament to the enduring magic of numismatics, where rarity elevates the ordinary into the extraordinary.